For sure, for the 2020 NBA free agency class, let's just be real, guys. It's pretty whack. The only highlighted players we did see and people were kind of had their eye on was Anthony Davis, but he won the championship with LeBron James. There wasn't any drama or chaos this season, so we all expected Anthony Davis to re-sign with the Lakers, which is pretty much the verbal he gave out to everyone. Now, kind of looking down from Anthony Davis, who else is going to be a free agent out there? There's going to be Andre Drummond. Oh wait, but Andre Drummond re-signed and opted in with the Cleveland Cavaliers to pretty much get paid around $30 million or so, and he's stuck with them now. So who else is out there? You got DeMar DeRozan. And for DeMar DeRozan, I actually think, even though it's a whack free agency class time period, he's a very underrated signing. Now, looking to this offseason, it's not going to be based on big moves for free agency signings like it pretty much was last season with Kawhi Leonard, Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, and then a couple of trades. You had Russell Westbrook, you had Anthony Davis, and kind of these other cats like Paul George. What we're really going to see now for this free agency class is not going to be a lot of big signings. This offseason is going to be based on trades. Now, we could see some trades with Bradley Beal, Chris Paul, Victor Oladipo, maybe John Wall, Blake Griffin, Derrick Rose, a couple other players like that. But one of the big signings that could actually not change the NBA in a big way, but basically it can make a pretty good move for any franchise. You got to keep your eye kind of on it. Of course, is for DeMar DeRozan. Now, for DeMar DeRozan, he's been in the league ever since of 2010. He pretty much came into the league whenever he signed with the Toronto Raptors, and he was drafted by them. He played for them for 9 seasons. He's always been electric, and looking at his stats, he's been picking it up as he went. So basically, starting in the 2009-2010 season, no one really knew DeMar DeRozan too much. He would give you 8 points a game, and he pretty much was kind of progressing as we've seen the next season. He actually jumped from 8 points to 17, and then kind of a little more. He would go to 18 to 22. We kind of knew DeMar DeRozan earlier in his career of just pretty much joining the slam dunk competition. He would kind of, he would be in that competition with him, and then we had Terrence Ross. But the Toronto Raptors were nowhere near elite as a team or franchise. But basically, when it came down to 2013, 2014, and 2015 in that range, we actually saw a huge progression in the Toronto Raptors' success, let alone with DeMar DeRozan. So in the 2014 season, we actually saw DeMar DeRozan bump up to around 23 points a game. The Toronto Raptors came out of nowhere and they actually secured the 3rd seed in the Eastern Conference, in which a lot of people probably didn't even have them making the playoffs, let alone. We all knew that the Brooklyn Nets, with their big three, or not big three, their old three of, you had Darren Williams, you had KG, you had Brook Lopez, you had Paul Pierce, and Joe Johnson. Pretty much that core 5 of their old team. They actually won in 7 games and upsetted the Raptors. But the Raptors, pretty much with DeMar DeRozan, they kind of kicked it off the next couple of seasons, making a conference finals appearance against the Cleveland Cavaliers and kind of losing to LeBron 3 years in a row. That kind of led the Toronto Raptors to retool their team and trade for Kawhi Leonard. And the rest is history. The Raptors won a championship, and DeMar DeRozan went out the door into San Antonio. So DeMar DeRozan, he pretty much was a top 15, top 20 player in the league. He was really cool with Kyle Lowry. He was always on top of the Eastern Conference until LeBron kicked him out. But he was an all-star type player. And ever since he went to the San Antonio Spurs, he's been consistent at around 22, 23 points a game. Pretty much around 48 to 50% shooting from the field. But he only made 1 playoff appearance. They lost in 7 games to, back into the 2018-2019 season. And back in the 2020 season, they pretty much barely just missed the playoffs for the last 2 games in the bubble. If you're DeMar DeRozan, you're definitely going to look in free agency. You're not going to opt in back with the Spurs because pretty much the Spurs and Popovich are pretty much going to retire and split ways. The Spurs are most likely, they're going to rebuild, they're going to retool, they're going to blow it up. If you're DeMar DeRozan, you're not going to opt in for $27 million. Makes no sense. You're going to test yourself as a free agent back in the market. So pretty much kind of leads us today. What are the different teams that DeMar DeRozan can join, and can it change the league at all whatsoever? So a couple of teams I'm kind of looking at if you're DeMar DeRozan. Number 1, you definitely, for your initiative, you want to get paid the bag. Let's just be real. If you're 29, 30 years of age, this is pretty much going to be one of your last big contracts. Every NBA player is, aware of this. This actually happened with Chris Paul whenever he was around 34 years of age. So kudos to him. But if you're DeMar DeRozan, you don't have that rep. So if you want to get paid the bag, you got to find franchises who have the money. So ideally, if you're DeMar DeRozan, you want to go to a contender, which is probably not going to be the case. So I think DeMar DeRozan's cool in his career to where he's going to get paid the bag and he can be a number 1, number 2 option and be at a franchise that's kind of struggling. So looking at those different type of teams, number 1, the Chicago Bulls. If he wants to get paid, he wants to be, people kind of look up to him and kind of be that quote-unquote all-star type player. If you're the Chicago Bulls, you're begging for a change in your team and your franchise. You just fired your head coach. You're trying to make Zach LaVine happy with Larry Markkinen, and they are lacking a small forward. They could use a veteran presence out there. I think DeMar DeRozan, he can go to the Chicago Bulls. It would work out both ways. He can get paid. Now, where does that leave Chicago and DeMar DeRozan? That leaves Chicago Bulls pretty much as a 7th or 8th seed, I would expect, for the 2021 season. I think their peak would actually just be, just from first-round exits. So if you're DeMar DeRozan, you got to look at that if that's actually winning's a big case for you as well. He could go off and he could join the Cleveland Cavaliers. I doubt that's the case. No star ever wants to go to Cleveland, and let alone he's just an all-star player trying to sign a 4 or 5 year contract. So I definitely don't see it with the Cleveland Cavaliers, even though they would have the cap space for him when it comes down to it. Now, if you're DeMar DeRozan and if you want to join a contender and if you pretty much want to take a huge pay cut and join a contender to win a championship, that could be the case. You could look at the Clippers, the Lakers, who are looking for a third big 3 when it comes to the Clippers and Lakers. You could take a 1-year deal, and that's very unprecedented. We don't see that in the NBA. The only player who actually did that was DeMarcus Cousins, who could have got paid around $20 million a year in 2018, but he actually joined the Warriors out of nowhere for veterans minimum, which pretty much shocked the whole world. I doubt DeMar DeRozan actually does that, but you never know this day and age whenever it comes down to him. For him, he could join the Memphis Grizzlies, a young team that has cap space and is actually looking, for a player to actually do something with Ja Morant that can score. Definitely, there's probably a couple moving parts. They would have to move away Justice Winslow, Gorgie Jang, and probably Kyle Anderson's contract to make that happen. But if you're DeMar DeRozan, that's an opportunity for the Grizzlies, who are pretty close to the playoffs. I don't think that's ideal for him. But it's an opportunity. Now, I think a more legitimate case would be the Atlanta Hawks. Trae Young in the group, they missed the playoffs the last 2 seasons. Trae Young is begging to get to the playoffs, and you have a great front court. Pretty much you got Clint Capella and John Collins. If you're the Hawks, you need a 3 who can score. Now, you do right now at your 3, you have DeAndre Hunter. He's doing fine, but he's young. I think the Atlanta Hawks would actually benefit if they were to have DeMar DeRozan for their timeline of things. They got the money, they got the cap space. I think for DeRozan, him and Trae Young, they would actually be somewhat of a pretty good team. But of course, this is not the peak for the Hawks and Trae Young. This would just pretty much buy time if you were to bring in DeMar, and it can give you a nice 23 points a game. You can play him with the second unit whenever it's the second quarter. Of course, he's going to be starting, but I can see that for the Hawks as well. Another franchise that actually is kind of very similar to the Atlanta Hawks and their situation where, he's looking to get paid is, of course, going to be the Orlando Magic. Now, the Magic has been always in that 7th or 8th seed for the last 2 seasons. They've been pretty much stuck in the middle. Now, there's going to be some cap, flexibility whenever they're going to let go of pretty much Evan Fournier in free agency. And they could look to move Vucevic, but they're pretty much going to keep their same core foundation. You could have DeMar DeRozan join that team. They are pretty much kind of lacking a small forward or a shooting guard. Now, you do have Jonathan Isaac at the 3. You can always move DeMar to the 2, or you can move Jonathan Isaac back to the 4, and they can play kind of that, kind of wing game small ball type. So actually, I would like the Orlando Magic and DeMar DeRozan. Preferably, if you're DeMar, if you have to choose between the Hawks or the Magic, ideally, I think he would actually go to Orlando when it comes down to that. And then lastly, the Denver Nuggets. I think that would be an ideal fit for him to be on there. But the thing was, Michael Porter Jr. actually blossomed in a way we actually haven't seen. So I think that equation was actually, that selection was actually out of the equation after these playoffs, which I was thinking about DeMar DeRozan on the Nuggets when it came down to it. Lastly, looking at the other teams out there, the Toronto Raptors, I think he would actually have to take a pay cut if he wants to come back home to his franchise with Kyle Lowry. And again, if you're the Raptors, you need something to keep you rejuvenated. You lost Kawhi Leonard. You lost in the second round, Game 7. If you can bring back DeMar DeRozan for like a 2-year contract and pretty much on a discount, I think DeMar would do that to go back home. But overall, there's really no other teams when it comes down to it. Basically, if he wants to get the bag and pretty much be that star player, number 1, number 2 option, go to the Magic or go to the Hawks. And if you want to take a pay cut and go for that championship, you can go haywire and join the Lakers or Clippers on a very low contract. But I think if you want to meet in the middle, you go to the Toronto Raptors, which I know he never wanted to leave. So, hey, let me know what you guys think down below, where he can go based on, what's his motives. Is it going to be getting the bag, year contract, take a discount, win a championship? But any of these decisions, the league pretty much would keep an eye on. Nothing too big unless he were to join the Lakers or Clippers and take that huge DeMarcus Cousins pay cut type role. Let's see what happens.